I'm going to take you behind the scenes and walk you through all the gory details for this client that has about $1.9 million and is getting ready to retire. Let's do it. Welcome back. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Steven Spicer. I've been in the industry for more than 15 years, and I love walking people through this stuff. So let's go ahead and jump behind the scenes. Now, this particular client, I've changed their names here to Rick and Rita Ready. They're getting ready for retirement. We can look at their information here. They are really close to retirement age. So they're 61 and 56. Rita is still working. She works at a school, and her husband would like her to retire next year, wants to know if that's in the cards. But he's also very concerned. They're very conservative. He's very concerned that she have enough money no matter what happens to him. So he's preparing for all the possibilities, and that's what I like. That's my forte, is just making sure that we've covered our bases and that we're prepared for what might happen in the future. Because there's a lot of things that could happen, and so we want to make sure that we're not caught off guard. And that's exactly how this client is. This gentleman doesn't need to spend a ton. He's pretty thrifty. But again, like I said, he's more concerned about if he passes away, making sure that his wife is beyond taken care of. So I came into the planning picture after another advisor had already set them up with an indexed universal life policy. It's a good one. He did a good job, so that's fine. And then also an annuity that he had set them up with, which I may not have done it exactly the same way that advisor did it, but I don't think it was a terrible idea, and I think it works. Again, these are very conservative investors. We've talked about in other videos how an annuity can work like a very conservative piece of your portfolio. I actually would prefer it to bonds in many instances. It works like a CD on steroids. It usually gets higher returns than a CD gets. But the lockup period is also longer than a CD is, and the penalty is also higher if you pull it out early. So you have, it's bigger on both ends. The positives and the negatives are larger. That's, as you would get with steroids, right? So that's the analogy. It's not perfect, but hopefully that helps you get an idea of where that could fit in. So they put a large chunk into an annuity, and so we're going to help them evaluate, does it make sense to annuitize right now? Should they just leave it as a conservative investment and ultimately pull it out of there in the future and just have it as a conservative piece of their portfolio forever? That's actually how their current plan is set up, and then we're going to compare that to their options going forward. But just so you can get familiar with what they have right now, they have various accounts here that you can see: 401ks, IRAs. This annuity is in a traditional IRA, so it will be 100% taxed as it starts to come out. We'll look at Roth conversion options here in a little bit, but that's one of the considerations that we need to explore. Rita has a little bit in the Roth and a traditional IRA as well. So you can see there are various accounts here, not uncharacteristic of a couple that has worked their entire lives. Rita also has a pension that we'll get to here in a second, but you can see their assets and their mix here. We're not gonna spend a ton of time on every screen here. If there is anything in particular that you're interested in exploring, some rabbit hole that you want to go down, let me know. Let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to go down that, but to go down that with you. So this is looking at the income that you can pull from these various accounts, and just to give you an idea of what we're looking at there. When it's saying that the spending capacity for this couple is about $9,000 a month, those are the accounts it's pulling from. Now, as you pass through time, it's going to be pulling from different sources because eventually their Social Security is going to turn on. If we choose to annuitize, then that's going to be an income source. So it's factoring all of this stuff in. And again, here's another area that we're not going to spend a ton of time on, but the way that we're working with clients, and I've explained this in other videos, you can check out this one up here if you want a more detailed deep dive about why we plan this way. But we're helping educate them on what the future will look like in retirement. Usually, people don't just run out of money; they adapt. So that's what we're planning for here. Is you're going to give yourself a pay cut if your account balance drops by a certain amount, and you can allow yourself a pay raise if it goes up by a certain amount. So that's what this is looking at here, just to give them an idea of when they would be able to give themselves a pay raise, when they could be okay with that, and when they would need to take pay cut. And if they said, you know what, I need more money than this today, that's not enough for me to live on, we could do that, but that's gonna restrict these bands a little bit. It's gonna make it to where it's a little bit further away before we give ourselves a pay raise, or before they give themselves a pay raise, and it's a little bit tighter if the market starts to fall. On the other end, if they say, you know what, I'm spending way less than that, then you're gonna be able to get a pay raise much sooner, and you have a much more of a cushion on the bottom side. So we'll just leave it right here in the middle, but just gives you an idea of how we're using these bands as helping clients plan. Let's look at their cash flows with this baseline plan, and we'll do this again as we manipulate some of the elements. So the purple here is their portfolio withdrawal. So included in their portfolio here is this annuity, right? That's a large chunk of their portfolio today, and they're just pulling it out penalty-free as they are allowed to, and then as a conservative piece of their investment going forward. So that's how it's showing up here. The nice thing about it as a conservative piece of the portfolio is that it has a 0% floor, so it can't drop. Whereas if you have bonds as that conservative piece of your portfolio, there is a risk that they drop. So that's why I tend to like those better for that conservative piece. But anyway, you can see the breakdown of their Social Security benefits when those are turning on. Right now, they're just both set to come on at full retirement age. We'll evaluate that in a second as well. And then you do have Rita's pension that turns on here when she turns 60. Even if she retires next year, that's when it's going to turn on. So anyway, that's the cash flow that they're currently looking at, how they're able to support when they want to retire in a year, if they retire in a year, which was their question, how they're able to support today's equivalent of around $9,000 a month, right? Like that's what we're looking at here, this number, $9,081. We can compare that. Obviously, there's a ton of variables that go into this, and I talk about that in my book. I talk about that in a lot of other videos. There's so many variables. The only thing we know about this plan, about any plan, is that it's not going to be correct, right? Like there will be changes, and that's why we're regularly meeting. We're regularly going through this stuff. But the best information that we have comes from history, and that's what we can look at here is where are we getting this number and how does it stack up compared to historical time periods. So this is looking at all these time periods throughout history where, if they had retired in 1986, how much they could have, today's equivalent, how much they could have lived off on a monthly basis between now and the time that they died, right? I mean, obviously we're making some assumptions there as well, but with the longevity, which we have them out into, late 90s, because we're preparing for the worst, they could have pulled out closer to $12,000, right? Of course, the scenario is different now. The economy is different now. And that's why this is all grayed out, because it's not a good comparison for us. These blue areas are much better comparisons. They're more economically relevant. There's high economic context. And so these are closer to what we could expect, right? If history repeated itself exactly as far as rates of return, interest rates, inflation rates, right? I mean, all of these different variables, economic variables that go into your financial future, if it repeated exactly like it did from October 1968, if that was when they retired and then lived to the longevity that we have input here, they would have been able to pull out today's equivalent of $9,116, right? A lot of variables going in here, but this gives us some historical context for what we're talking about here. Some of these come in a little bit lower than what we're looking at here with our black line. Most of them come in a little bit higher, some of them quite a bit higher. This one, if we go back to 1873, right, we have some data for that, but we're so far removed from that as being a reality that I would be remiss to use that as the historically relevant context for us. But anyway, so hopefully this gives you an idea of what we're looking at here for them. So they can feel pretty confident with this $9,000 a month level. With all there's a lot of behind the scenes planning that we've done with them, but hopefully this gives you a good idea of what we're looking at here. And now let's look at a few questions that we want to help them answer in this planning meeting that we're about to go into. So first of all, we want to evaluate what it would look like if we turn on that annuity. If we say, you know what, goodbye to that $1,060,000 that we were looking at, right? So you can see their account balance has dropped here. We just went ahead and got rid of that annuity because we're gonna say we're gonna annuitize it. That's not exactly what we're doing here. It's still an account. It still has a death benefit if they die early. So just again, a lot of things we're not going to dive into in this video, but just for the sake of illustration here, I want to say, okay, they both live a long time, because that's high longevity for both of them is going to be the most expensive scenario that we need to plan for. So we're going to say goodbye to that $1 million. So now they have $800,000 left to work with in their portfolio. But then we turned it into a guaranteed income stream. And so we're looking at what are the guarantees right now. If they turn on their annuity today, what is their guaranteed income stream? And so we can pop over here and see that the annuity income that's listed, $49.49, that's what they're looking at today. And then we'll look at what would it look like if they turn on their annuity income in a year, and which is when they want to retire. And what if they wait a year after that? What does that look like? So we're going to give them those different options here, and you get to explore that with us. What is that going to do to their bottom line income that they can take? So yeah, you see that it bumped up what they can comfortably spend. And the nice thing about this is that annuity income is guaranteed by that company. So you have that. It's not inflation adjusted in this case. Sometimes it can be, but that's just how this one was. But it's creating this baseline for them that everything else is stacking on top of. So you have this $49.49 here at the bottom. So you have their Social Security stacking on top of this, and then Rita's pension here, which then puts them at an even higher level than what we're starting with today, when we're saying that, well, if they retire in a year, they can have today's equivalent of $9,300 effectively, right? And you're filling in these gaps here with these portfolio withdrawals. But yeah, so hopefully this gives you an idea of what they're looking at if they turn on their annuity today. And then we're going to see a similar picture here, but again, whatever they end up going with is probably where we want to spend more time exploring what that would look like, and then also what these guardrails would look like, so they have a good idea of what their planning is going to look like going forward. But let's help them make their decision and move on to, well, what if they retire in May of next year? So they move it out a year. Their guaranteed income from that annuity went up from 49 up to 54. So it's 54.14 now. So $5,400 a month that's coming in. Again, that's not adjusted for inflation, but you have this nice flat line across the bottom that's going to continue this whole time, which is what made it to where they have a higher spending capacity on a monthly basis. So we went from, in that first scenario where we were just using as a conservative piece of their portfolio, from $9,000, now we're up to $9,500. Right? So that's a big jump, and that comes from having stable lifetime income. And I talk about that in my book. I talk about it in other videos. I mean, that is more valuable than you might think, having that predictable income coming in. Not only does it work out better financially for you, as far as the guarantees that you can have and the comfort that you can have here, right? I mean, that's going to help a lot here with these guardrails as well, but it also helps psychologically, and that's something we can't measure. If you know that paycheck is coming in, you've lived your entire life with a paycheck coming in the door every month, right? I mean, these folks, Rick and Rita here, I mean, they're getting this paycheck from their annuity, which is sizable. They're getting a nice paycheck from Social Security in this scenario. Rita's getting a nice supplementary paycheck here as well from Social Security. I guess the purple is Social Security. I may have said that backwards earlier. And then she has her pension as well. So they have 4 paychecks coming in, which is fantastic. I mean, if you can cover 100% of your expenses, especially if you can do not only essential expenses but also discretionary expenses, if you can cover 100% of those in retirement, I mean, that's the dream. Think about how comfortable that is if you have these guaranteed sources of stable lifetime income coming in, especially if you have some of them that are adjusting for inflation, like these Social Security benefits are. The pension benefit is a set increase of 3% per year. Anyway, that's amazing. Not everybody has that. Most people don't. And so this is great for them. Again, hopefully this is just giving you some ideas, because everybody's situation is different, but maybe you can take some of this and apply it to yourself. So let's go out one more year. We start to see a diminishing, a little bit less of a value here. to pushing it out another year. But you move now from, you had 9,000, you went up to 9,500. If we waited a year, now we're going to push out another year, and we go another 300 that we're adding on top of that they can comfortably take out. And it doesn't take long before it's significantly more. One thing about this client is that they are currently spending way less than this today. So as we have this conversation and we're planning, and this is very exciting for them. And again, when we talk about the guarantees, a lot of people would love to say, well, like I don't want it in that annuity for whatever reason. Everybody's different, and that may be the case for you. For them, the guarantee of that paycheck coming in, that made a big difference for them, and especially Rick's comfort going into retirement, knowing that's a joint payout, right? The way that this is set up, the way that advisor set it up, and the way that we're looking at it here, we're looking at the joint payout numbers. That's not just on Rick's life. So when he dies, of course, he's more worried about Rita if he passes away, and so this is actually, for as long as either one of them is alive, they're getting this paycheck. So the amount of comfort that this has brought him is significant. So we can see this just in a quick overview here, right? This is if they don't turn on their annuity, if they turn on their annuity today, if they wait a year to turn on their annuity, if they turn on their annuity in 2 years. So you can see the difference that annuity is bringing to their long-term financial plan. And like I said, I mean, when we're looking at it here, when we're accounting for it in their, let's see, when we're accounting for it, when we're accounting for it right here in this 1.9 million, we have $1 million of that, and it's invested conservatively. So we have it growing for them there as a conservative investment, which is, I mean, he wouldn't want to be aggressive with it anyway. He's a very conservative investor, so it fits for them. So I mean, it's not like we're just disregarding it and saying it's not growing. It's growing here, and this is what they can expect from it comfortably. You gain a lot of benefits here when we remove that $1 million and take it as an income instead. The amount of spending that they're able to comfortably participate in is much higher. So for this planning consideration moving forward, we're going to take this annuity income in 2 years. Right, so they're retiring in 1 year in the 2026 area. That's their plan. And then they're going to wait a year. We're going to do some Roth conversions during that time. Not a ton. And we'll look at that and it's actually, let's go ahead and look at that now. So if we pull this up, we can look at the difference that it makes here. Again, this is not a Roth conversion video per se, but we can draw the comparisons here as I'll go through with this client as well, so that they can decide what makes sense. Does it make sense to do any Roth conversions at all? It makes sense to do a little bit for them. Yeah, let's go ahead and compare. So what if they're converting to the 12% bracket? And we compare it to pro rata. That's how everything's been set up thus far, which is just pulling from a little bit from every account. So if you compare, so even the taxable, tax-deferred, tax-free, which is probably more likely what you would instinctively do, that gives you a marginally better benefit here, like as far as lowering your tax rate. But if we look at the idea of Roth conversions up to the 12% bracket, so for this particular client, we're looking at the 12% bracket because they're not spending a ton, so we can fill that up and we can get all those Roth conversions accomplished, and not have to push them into paying more taxes than they need to in order to get this done. That's the optimal setup for them. It lowers their average tax rate throughout retirement to 9.14% instead of closer to 11%. The amount in taxes that they're paying gets reduced by about $180,000, right? So significant benefits if they do this. They're going to do a little bit of it. We'll see going forward. But anyway, it's just contextually they can see the value of doing this over those 2 years. And if any years in the future we are coming in below that 12%, then we can continue doing more. They're just going to have a very small window between the time that they retire and the time that they're planning on turning on, the time that they would like to turn on that annuity income. And so we only have that about a year window to do those conversions. So really 2 years, 2 taxable years where they're making way less that we could do that. But you can see the differences here, the side-by-side comparison as we're doing that. You can see if you did the pro rata versus the Roth conversion, you're staying in lower tax brackets, the total taxes that you'll pay over time, Again, you start off higher taxes here just by a little bit, but then on the back end, because we've moved so much into tax-free accounts, we have lowered our taxes on the back end. And I've pointed out in videos like this in the past, the biggest benefit that I like on this is looking at the amount that we get into a tax-free account. So again, this isn't what they're looking at. They're probably not going to get this much converted over in this time. But the idea is if we can get a large tax-free bucket, that really frees up a lot of the opportunity for greater flexibility for spending in the future, right? If they need to buy a new car, which they do, that's on their radar. They know that they're going to need to at some point in retirement for each of them. And so as they need to, they don't have to pull it all out of a traditional IRA. If you pull it out of a traditional IRA and you buy a $50,000 car, I don't know that they're pretty conservative. They probably wouldn't, but in your case, if you pull out $50,000 to buy that car, it looks like you made an extra $50,000 that year. So you're going to be taxed on that. And if that pushes you in a higher tax bracket, you're going to pay even more on that $50,000 than you would have had to otherwise. If you have a tax-free account, it gives you that flexibility that you don't have to, that you don't do that to yourself, right? Like even, in this extreme scenario, right? You want to buy your dream lake house here for $1 million. Again, it's an extreme, but you have $2.2 million here sitting in your tax-free account. If you try to buy it with cash, pulling from a traditional IRA, you're going to owe a lot in taxes because it's going to look like you made that money that year. So the flexibility of a tax-free account it is again one of those things that we can't really measure. The psychological value, benefit, comfort that brings to you. Okay, so that's the annuity question. So now we're going to take this assumption and we're going to move that forward. Rita had a pension buy-up option, right? So remember, her pension is becoming available to her next year or when she's 60. So now she was presented with a buy-up option where she could put in $33,000. And so we took that. So you'll see that her account balance is a little bit less here. We took that out of her Roth IRA here. We funded the $33,000 pension buy-up. So this used to be $170. Now it's down to $137. So we took out the $33,000. We paid for her pension buy-up. And what that did was increase their income by a little bit. Now they weren't planning on doing this. And honestly, they could go either way if they don't want to have to worry about it. But it is another check that they're going to be able to receive. But it won't start for another couple of years. So I guess you won't see it here. You'll see it on this cash flow. It's a teeny tiny sliver right there. That yellow line here is Rita's buy-up option. So she's trying to make that decision right now, and Rick's trying to make that decision right now of do they want to take $33,000 out of their accounts and purchase this buy-up option, and then it's another $2,700 per year. Right, so to them, they're like, that's not very much. We could run some basic equations on that to see exactly what that would be worth. It's a pretty decent ROI. The problem is you don't know how long you're going to live. And so you could be putting in that $33,000 and Rita dies in 5 years, in 2 years, and it wouldn't have been worth it. But since they're very conservative and they're looking out for the long haul, and especially he's concerned for her and her living much longer than he does, financially, this move does make sense, but it's negligible. I mean, you can see the difference is negligible. It went from 9,800 something to 9,900 something. So there's a little bit of a difference. But yeah, so you can compare these two levels here. You can see where we took the projected balance from 796,000. Pretty much 800,000, took it down to $762,000, right? So they have less money to work with, less of a portfolio to be pulling from to fill in the gaps, but yet their spending capacity goes from 98.31 to 99.22. So it goes up by about $80 per month that they're able to comfortably spend with that change in their plan. So not a huge deal one way or the other, but this is another way versus just the math behind it and deciding, well, what's the internal rate of return if we're getting this. There's a lot of variables involved. The variable we're not adjusting for is longevity here, but we're planning for the worst case scenario that they both live a really long time. If they throw down $33,000 and Rita, the one who's entitled to that pension, dies shortly afterward, that obviously, like I said, is a worse investment. But so they're weighing these type of decisions, which is the case for everything here. They have to plan for all these different variables and just make sure they're set up in the best possible scenario. So it is slightly better from a financial planning perspective, from a long-term financial planning perspective, to do that pension buy-up option. But if they choose not to, I'm not going to be offended. It's more money for me to manage. So that's not motivating my decision here, obviously, because I would say that they probably on paper should do that. So that's the decision that they have to make. Let's look at the Social Security side of things, when they should file for Social Security and what that looks like. First, let's pull up this annuity one, and then we can look at the Social Security one after I apply the changes here. So we're gonna go to our decision lab here and just look at the Social Security side of this. I did a different video walking you through all the different variables here. So let's bump their life expectancy down a little bit, because the higher it is, then of course it's gonna say you're better off taking it later. But you can see here with where it's at, the difference between, so all of these, so on this side here, on the right side, we have Rick claiming at age 70. The dark blue is where you're in your optimal area. So you look at the difference here. If Rita files at 62 and Rick files at 70, you have a $60,000 difference over the course of your life, right? $2,030,000 and $2,091,000 at the optimal number. A negligible difference over the course of your life. I know, $61,000 difference. That's a big deal. But if they both file at 70, if they both file at 70 here, it's actually a little bit less. But again, that's based on the whatever the ages were here, 196 or something. But let's look at if we're looking at a 90-year range, what does it look like? Well, it drops her a little bit. But again, this whole side is pretty dark blue, saying we want Rick to take it at the high end. He has a much larger Social Security claim, and if he's worried about Rita, he's going to have a higher survivor benefit if he waits to claim, right? So if he waits till 70 and then he dies at 71, but Rita lives until she's 100, her survivor benefit is going to be much higher because he claims later. So he's interested in that as well. But you can see the difference here again at 62. And 70 at those filing ages for Rita and Rick respectively. The difference is relatively negligible if we're talking about over the course of your life. Again, we're optimizing it here, but there are variables in here that are going to change. If they die at different times, then this isn't necessarily going to be the optimal. We're helping them plan. They both have high longevity. They're both very healthy. They run. So we're planning for long longevity. But let's look at. He is concerned about Social Security. I understand politically it's a third rail in that, nobody's going to at least say that they're going to mess with it. But it is something that we want to, just the possibility. What if the benefit goes down? So current projections from the Social Security Administration are that if nothing is changed, and again, this is always the case, and they always find a way to kick the can down the road. This is the last thing that they're going to mess with, but doesn't mean that they won't. But the current Social Security Administration says if nothing changes in 2035, there would be a 17% reduction, and that's what's currently funded. So if we apply that change, how is that going to affect them? It doesn't. The benefit is less that they're receiving. But the ages that they should claim are still the same. So that's going to be different for different people at different times. Depends on where you are, but they're enough away from full retirement age that if this change happened at this time, it's not gonna impact them. So let's leave that on, and then let's also look at opportunity costs. So what if they were receiving their Social Security earlier, and so then they were able to invest that money, right? That's going to make a difference as well. Let's say that let's just go high end. They're conservative investors, right? But let's say that they're going to be able to realize a 4% rate of return there. All right, so now you've seen a real shift here, and we're talking about way smaller values here. Again, it's more complex than just looking at this actual number, because we're talking about the money that they're pulling off being able to be invested. But anyway, you can see here that it's still leaving his age pretty high. So, even obviously you can get down here and it's a negligible difference. But yeah, this gives you an idea of where would be optimal based on these different variables, right? I mean, and we went pretty high here on the opportunity cost, but if we make that adjustment, then it's all up on the upper end. As I told you before, they're conservative investors, so they like the predictability, they like the guarantees, they like what might be coming through, but they do have concerns about the future of Social Security, so that's fine. So we'll plan for that. But it looks like if they filed Social Security at age 62 for Rita, start getting that income as soon as possible, and then waited until age 70 for Rick, because that way he knows that she's taken care of, right? They're maximizing his Social Security. Hers isn't going to matter if he thinks he's going to die first, because once he dies, then it's just going to his Social Security is what she's going to start receiving. So anyway, that's what we've settled on when we talked. But it's a negligible difference here, right? I mean, now you're talking about $1,000 difference if they file optimally versus if she files early. And really, I mean, he could honestly file early as well. But again, he's wants to maximize what he's going to be receiving, like the actual dollar amount for her. So, and remove the variable of their ages here. It's just, this is how much she's going to be receiving, even if she lives till she's 100, right? Like, what if we do want to plan for that? Like, what does that look like? Like, let's move her up to 100 here. Let's see. Yeah. So now, yeah, it's exactly that. We want him to retire at 70. She can still retire at 62, and that's okay. Right. So if you look at the optimal, I mean, it's months difference, and it's actually the same. We're just looking at the thousands place. Anyway, so that was the Social Security decision for them, and there's several considerations. We could go deeper here in different ways that we could look at it, but that's enough for this video in this context. And then we have this, what we've called the optimized plan, which is just, for now is throwing in all three of these variables. We have the annuity income coming on in May of 2027. We have Rita exercising her pension buy-up option. And then we have their Social Security adjustments that we talked about, where she's filing at 62 and he's filing at 70. And you can see the difference where we started with $9,000 a month comfortably. Now we're up to $10,261 a month. They have $760,000 sitting in their investment accounts that we have invested in just a mix of tactical asset allocation strategies. So that those defensive market-based strategies, but also we have some in physical gold. We have some in other sort of hyperinflation chaos hedges. Things that we've talked about in other videos, things that I talked about in my book, things that we talk about in the Financial Doomsday Survival Guide. That's where we really dive into all of that stuff. But anyway, this is a breakdown of what they're looking at going into retirement if they make all these adjustments. They have all of these sources of guaranteed income. They have that annuity paying them $59, $55. And then we have this optimized plan here. We've already gone long, so I won't go into a ton of details, but this is just, when we pull all of these things together. We have the annuity income turning on in a couple of years for them. We have the pension buy-up option that Rita's taking. We have the Social Security adjustments where Rita's filing at 62 and Rick is filing at 70. Plug all of that in, and you can see a significant difference in their spending capacity compared to where they were at. So you have $10,000 here. We compare that to where they started before, where they were at $9,000. So significant difference between what they're looking at today and what they can ultimately get to just from these minor tweaks. And a lot of those are coming from guaranteed sources of stable lifetime income. You have the annuity, you have her pension, you have her pension buy-up, you have both of their Social Securities that we've tried to optimize based on all those different factors, all those different variables. So anyway, if you have specific things in here that you would like to look at and explore, let me know in the comments. Any other questions you have, let me know in the comments. If you do like these type of videos, then you'll love this one where we explore different aspects behind the scenes of a financial plan. I'll see you there.